And a trial is nothing more than a story. It has a villain, a hero, a beginning, a middle, and end. And so the idea of presenting a story was something that came very naturally to me.
All right, so welcome to the You Are Lawyer podcast. AX Foster, how are you?
I'm doing great. Nice to be with you today.
Yes. Okay, so I see a Michigan hat behind you. This is an Ohio
Yes.
State house.
Oh, Ohio State. Go blue, go
Oh
blue.
no! Oh no! I will say my husband and I went to the Ohio State Michigan game for our honeymoon. It was my first time in the big house, so it was a very cool experience. Very cool.
Well, we'll declare a truce for today, okay?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So I'm so excited to talk to you because you're an author, you're a lawyer, you're a Michigan supporter. But AX, would you tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now?
Well, I'm writing legal thrillers right now after a long career in the courtroom. Actually started off my career as a professional actor. And after 7 years, I decided I wanted to go to law school to get into entertainment law. And once I got to law school, I took a totally different path. I became fascinated with criminal law. And after I graduated, I accepted a job as a prosecutor, thinking I would be there a couple of years. And I ended up staying in the prosecutor's office for 20 years. Then I opened up my own law firm, and for the next 15 years, I was a criminal defense attorney. And when COVID came, I started writing because the courthouse was kind of closed down. And I wrote a legal thriller called Gavel to Gavel, and it did much better than I thought. And then my publisher and I did a second book, which is called Double Blind. They're about a prosecutor who does murder trials.
Yeah. I work with an assistant and she was like, I read the books, they're so good. And I was like, I gotta get them. I actually do
Excellent.
book reviews on YouTube, so I'm definitely gonna pick them up and read them and do a review.
Thank you. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, so okay. I've met a lot of lawyers who become authors, but I know the path. Was it easy? Was it the next logical step? Did it just make sense, or you were just so excited about it you just did it?
Well, I've always wanted to write because both of my parents were writers. My mom was a novelist and my dad was a newspaper editor. So I grew up in a house very much unlike today's day where we didn't have cell phones and video games and electronics. So we read books, and I've had a love of reading and writing my whole life. I never thought I would have the time to do it, but as I said, when COVID came along, I was like, let's do it. So I wrote the manuscript and sent it around, and it took me a year to write, and then it took me another year to get published because people wanted changes and things. And then the second book came a lot faster because I kind of felt like I knew what I was doing and I was in a rhythm. And it's part of a series that all features the same protagonist and with a different case. Think of it like the Hardy Boys for grown-ups, like a series. So I'll keep writing them as long as people enjoy the stories.
Yes, I love that. I'm a big criminal procedure thriller reader. So your books are making me think of the Cormoran Strike series that just happened, but he's more of like a private investigator. Of course, John Grisham writes a ton of thrillers, right? So lawyers, writers, yes, it's a big theme, but you got to tell me, did you start with the first chapter, or did you just start writing and it just happened to be the middle or the end and then you filled in the rest later?
Well, I was lucky because I had a formula already in place for me, which is how a criminal trial unfolds. So, my first book, Gavel to Gavel, from beginning to end, I start with a murder and the police investigation and the crime scene investigators. And I move all the way through the criminal procedure, indictment, pretrial motions, picking a jury, witness testimony, cross examination, closing arguments, verdict. So I already had a pattern based on all the trials I had done, and I filled it out that way. So the reader's kind of in the position of a juror, hearing the case and hearing the evidence, and each reader has to decide, is this person guilty or innocent, and then see if that comports with how I decided to end the book.
I love that. You get to take literally our legal knowledge, not the cases of anything you've done. Create your own set of facts and then bring a reader along with you. That's really cool.
Well, a lot of my reviews on Amazon say that they enjoy learning about the judicial system and so forth. And I try not to make it too in the weeds because of all the Latin expressions lawyers use and so forth. But I do like to educate because it's such a mysterious environment. When you get picked to be a juror, you're in this whole other world. These people are speaking another language. Everything is very formalized. And so I like to teach a little bit about the law and crime and how to prosecute and how to defend through the books. And that's the fun part for me.
Yeah. You know, I've always wanted to be picked for jury trial and I've never gotten chosen. I feel like because I want it so bad, they're never going to pick me.
They never pick me. They take one look at me and say, "Oh, he's a prosecutor. No way."
I'm like, I want it. I want it. I want it. Okay. So, AX, let's talk about life before law school. Did you know lawyers before you went to law school?
Well, not really. I grew up in a household where the arts were very prominent and grew up right in the middle of New York City on West 90th Street. As kids, we were encouraged to go to Broadway and see plays, see movies, read books, so I got a lot of that. And a trial is nothing more than a story. It has a villain, a hero, a beginning, a middle, and end. And so the idea of presenting a story was something that came very naturally to me. And so it kind of took off from there.
Yeah. Okay. So then you decide I'm going to go to law school, right? You said you were thinking about becoming an entertainment lawyer. Um, was your family shocked? Were they surprised, or were they like, "Oh, that makes sense"?
Well, I had worked for 7 years as an actor in New York City prior to going to law school, doing bit parts on soap operas and TV commercials. And I did one off Broadway play, but I was struggling. It was so hard to get work, and I was getting frustrated with that process. So when I said I was going to go to law school, my idea was to be a studio head or an executive or work at a network, something like that, or be an agent to sports athletes and to other types of artists. Oh, my mother was thrilled. She was like, "No more unemployed actor for you." So, yeah, she was happy. Hey, I didn't know I would last 1 week in law school. I was older. I was 7 years older than everyone. They were really smart, and I was thankful I made it through the first week of law school. But once we got to the part where we had to talk in front of everybody, I said, "Oh, I think I have a skill that might be worthwhile here." Because people are terrified of public speaking. And after being an actor and so forth, it was very second nature to me.
Yeah, which is true. And I think you make a good point when you were saying that court is like theater. It's like acting. I mean, it's very orchestrated. You got the bailiff, you got this movement, that movement. Like it is a whole scene. It is very, very orchestrated.
Yeah, and I think the acting background really helped me as a prosecutor and as a defense attorney. Not so much because you're taking on a character. You have to be yourself. People will pick up on that right away. But the idea of how to present something, how to watch the jury, make sure they're engaged, how to move around the courtroom, how to ask questions, and how to listen carefully, all those things come from the theater. So you don't take on a character and pretend you're somebody you're not, but the presentation skills that you learn on the stage translate very well to litigating a case in a courtroom.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So, actor, law school, prosecutor, defense for 20 years, and then author. You've had an incredible
Crazy,
career. You've had an incredible
crazy.
career. Would you write any dramas about law school? You think you would take it back? Like, can there be a murder in a school library or something? And
Well, I do have a couple of flashbacks to my first year of law school because that's another mysterious place that readers are like, "What was that like?" My next book that I'm working on now is a locked room mystery in the tradition of Agatha Christie, where a juror gets murdered inside the jury room. So you have 11 other suspects. It's kind of like 12 Angry Men, the old black and white movie with Henry Fonda. It's like 12 Angry Men meets, Murder on the Orient Express. So that's my next project. I'm trying to plot that out right now.
Yeah. All right. So, AX, typically when I talk to lawyers, I'm like, what have you been doing? I think that lawyers are so creative. How do you use your creativity? Well, you've told us all the ways you use your creativity, right? So I'm going to flip that question. How do you use your law degree as an author, right? Outside of the storytelling, right? Are you doing your negotiations yourself? Do you have an agent? Are you taking those parts on? Like, how do you use your legal education?
Well, I think your legal education just inculcates in you a feeling of logic, of figuring things out, of solving problems, solving puzzles. And that's kind of at the heart of all of my books is I present a bunch of puzzles. My second book, Double Blind, there are three puzzles for the reader to solve. Well, the first one is the defendant guilty or not guilty? The second one is there's a mysterious telephone stalker who's hounding the prosecutor. Who is it? One of the other characters. And then the third puzzle is a mysterious note where half of it is torn away and obliterated. And how do you complete the words? So I give the readers logical puzzles to solve as they go along. And that kind of is the way a lawyer thinks. In terms of publishing, I represent myself and dealt directly with my publisher on the first book. And everything worked out great. And so I made enough profit on the first book to invest in the second book. And my reader base just keeps growing and growing. I invite anyone interested in legal thrillers, look me up on Facebook, AX Foster, or my website, and so on. I'm super involved in book marketing and all that stuff. Last night, I gave a reading at a place called the Writers Center in Bethesda, Maryland. It was wonderful. So I do podcasts and readings and book signings and anything else people are interested in. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and to spread the word about it, right? Because it's all storytelling. Everything is storytelling. Marketing, storytelling, resumes, all literally writing a book is storytelling, right? Our entire lives are storytelling. So
Yeah, I mean, telling story, that's how humans communicate. I mean, we're doing it right at this very moment. We're telling each other stories. If you think about what language is, it's such an abstract thing. You have to have a thought and then you put it into sounds and I transmit them out and you have to receive them and uncode them or decode them. And that's because we're speaking English. If I switch to another language, we wouldn't be able to communicate. So it's a very abstract process. And when you write, the reader looks at words on a written page and has to imagine. So I just love the process. It's fascinating to me. I'm terrible with numbers. I have something called dyscalculia. Everyone's sort of dyslexia. I can't look at numbers. I don't even know my wife's phone number. I have to look it up each time. With letters, with words, with language, I'm pretty good. But with numbers, arithmetic, and algebra, I can't do it. So that's just how my brain was formed, I think.
yeah, okay. Yeah, I think that words and language are fascinating. I have a 4-year-old, and so we read every night, and I was just like, there's 26 letters in the American English alphabet, and it created this whole bookshelf. And she's like, what? And I'm like, yeah. Isn't it amazing? Yeah.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So I am a children's book author, and I was terrified to get started because I just was like, am I allowed to do that? And so I'm really being encouraged by listening to you and you saying, I decided to write a book, so I wrote a book. I think that is just lovely that you just decided to do it and you just did it. I think it's great.
Well, I did something a little unusual. I formed a jury of my own friends to read the manuscript when I had finished the first draft. Seriously, I sent out 12 copies to some judges I know, some really smart lawyers who are friends of mine, some family members, and a neighbor or two. And then I got all this feedback. And my very first manuscript, the plot was about a child abuse case, but no one wanted to read about a little girl being abused. So I'm like, take that out. keep the courthouse, the characters, and I made it a murder trial instead of a child abuse case. You can kill somebody and everyone will, verify that, but you have a child abuse case, no one wants to hear that. And particularly publishers, literary agents, and so on. So what I had to do was reconstruct the whole first book. That's my first book, Gavel to Gavel. I had to take out the guts of it. It's kind of like if you had a car and everything worked perfectly except the engine, but
Oh, no
keep the
big deal.
tires and yeah. But that took a long time to come up with a new plot. I have all these cases that I handled both as a prosecutor and a defense attorney rolling around in my mind. So the first book is about a domestic violence homicide where a woman kills her husband in a very brutal way with blood on the ceiling and so forth. And that actually tracks a real case that I did where a man killed his wife and I had to go to the crime scene and look at it. It was just horrible. So I used that case as a model. The second case is from the defense side is about a guy who's innocent and who's kind of railroaded by corrupt police. And I had a case that went kind of down that track as well. So I used my own life experiences to come up with these plots.
You had to rip out the engine of the first book and rebuild. I don't know a better way to say this. Why didn't you get discouraged? How did you know, oh, there's enough here for me to keep going?
Well, I got very good feedback from smart people. Publishers and agents in New York, were saying this has potential. And here's a big word for you, verisimilitude, they said. It has verisimilitude, meaning it's lifelike, it's realistic. It sounds like it really could happen that way. And when I got that feedback, I was like, that's great. After I looked up what verisimilitude means in the dictionary, I was like, yeah, I'll take a little verisimilitude. Then also, like I said, COVID was here, the courthouse was shut. I was like, I'm a super type A kind of person. I get stuff done. I don't go to the beach and get a suntan. I'm the guy in the museum. So when COVID here and the cases were all delayed, I'm like, what am I going to do every day? So here we go. Let's write it. And that was the genesis of it. It kind of just took off on its own from there.
Yeah. Okay. And so you're in New York right now.
Actually, I'm in Washington, D.C. I grew up
Okay.
in New York, but I live in Washington, D.C. area.
Okay, cool. All right.
A lot of
All
lawyers
right. All
down
right.
here.
Yes, definitely a lot of lawyers down there. All right. So I have two questions for you. AX, what would you say for a lawyer storyteller who wants to write books? What advice would you give?
Well, write what you know. I mean, I write about a courtroom and a prosecutor and murders. I didn't write a book about an astronaut going to Mars. I don't know anything about that. I didn't write a book about a surgeon doing a heart transplant. It's not my thing. So the advice I would give is write about something that you really know. Because I read all the legal thrillers, well, not all, but I read a lot of them, and I can spot right away someone who's a journalist who's writing a legal thriller, or someone who's a civil lawyer or a personal injury lawyer who writes about a big murder trial. They just don't ring true to me because I've been there. And my advice would be write about something that you know better than anyone else.
Yeah, because otherwise there won't be any verisimilitude. Was that the word?
There won't be any verisimilitude.
Verisimilitude.
That's
Okay.
it. That's it.
Verisimilitude. Okay. And so the last question is, the podcast audience is made up of young lawyers, 5 years practicing or less, or law students. What would you say to them about what they can do with their law degrees?
Oh, well, I may not be the best person to ask that question because I had no idea I was going to end up here. I went to law school for one reason, and then when we got to moot court, everyone in my law school had to participate as a first year 1L in moot court. Now, I was a professional actor, not to self aggrandize, but they really had never seen anybody like me doing the witnesses and pretending to be the judge. And I loved that. It was just a little theater game to me. So that in turn prompted me to do an internship with the Cobb County DA's office in Atlanta. And then I was like, this is so cool. You get to do a little crime, but it's real. These are real people that you're helping, and I really enjoy that aspect of it. So my advice would be keep your mind open. Sometimes you go to law school, I'm going to be a tax lawyer, or I'm going to be, corporate or whatever. You may not. So keep your mind open and be ready to swivel. If something comes your way, open that door and go through it.
Yeah. And I think that is the best advice you could give anyone, right? Because I was in big law for 5 years and I met some really cool lawyers. One was an accountant who had her law degree, and I was like, why are you an accountant but you went to law school? And then I met a guy who never took the bar exam to write comic books. And that was what sparked this podcast, because I was like, how many other people aren't practicing and who are doing cool things? And then 5 years later, now here we are. So,
Well, let me add one last thing on that. Remember, I took 7 years off from between college and law school. So I kind of matured a little. And when I went to law school, I wanted to be there and I was paying for it. So I was highly motivated to do the work. There were many younger students sitting next to me who were only in law school because their mom or their dad was a lawyer, and they didn't really want to be there. And a lot of them went through the whole thing depressed, and they probably never used their law degree. So I would say don't go to law school just because it's the next thing that's expected of you. Take a gap year. Make sure you really want to do it because it's a huge commitment.
it is a commitment of money and your attention and energy. Oh, man.
Oh, it's so difficult. I mean, I've never done so much reading. I mean, you sit down all weekend, you're sitting outdoors by the pool and you have to read 600 pages and you have to understand what the hell, they mean. So, yeah, it's not easy, but I actually my first year of law school, I loved it because it was so exciting and I felt like I was doing well. So, keep your mind open, young people, and take a little time off if you need to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, AX. This was phenomenal. You've given me a ton of advice, and I know the audience is going to absolutely love it. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and take a look at my book. I hope you'll enjoy it.
Yes,
Let me know.
I absolutely will, everybody. And I'll make sure I tag both of the books in the episode notes. Okay.
Go Blue.
Oh, bye. I gotta go.